Well, good morning, everyone. On behalf of Marsha's family, I want to thank you all for coming out today. Apart from the fact that we wish we weren't here at all today, your attendance is deeply appreciated. So thank you all for coming. I'd like to begin our service with this beautiful poem you can find on the inside of your memorial brochure. It's entitled, Remember Me. To the living I'm gone, to the sorrowful I will never return, to the angry I was cheated, but to the happy I'm at peace, and to the faithful I have never left. I cannot speak, but I can listen. I cannot be seen, but I can be heard. So as you stand upon a shore, gazing at a beautiful sea, remember me. As you look in awe at a mighty forest and its grand majesty, remember me. As you look upon flower and admire its simplicity, remember me. Remember me in your heart, your thoughts, and your memories of the times we loved, the times we cried, the times we fought, the times we laughed. If you will always think of me, I will have never gone. Pretty. Well, Marsha did have a favorite singer, so I'm not going to tell you who it was. I'll just kind of start the song and see if you can figure it out. Come on, get over there. Well, it's 1 for the money, 2 for the show, 3 to get ready. Now go, cat, go, but don't you step in my blue suede shoes. You can do anything, lay off of my blue suede shoes. You can knock me down, step on my face, slander my name all over the place. Do anything you want to do, but honey, lay off my shoes, don't you step in my blue suede shoes. You can do anything but lay off of my blue suede shoes. You can burn my house, steal my car, drink my liquor from an old fruit jar. Do anything you want to do, but honey, lay off my shoes, don't you step in my blue suede shoes. You can do anything but lay off my blue suede shoes. Blue suede shoes, blue suede shoes, blue suede shoes, blue suede shoes. You can do anything but lay off of my blue suede shoes. That's one of the first songs you learn at seminary. Not really. Marsha Whiteside was born November 26, 1948 in Sacramento, California. She died January 19, 2012 at home here in Portland, Oregon, after living 63 years, 1 month, 24 days. Survived by her children Jeff and Stacy, her sister Sherry, and her ex-husband Bob. So Marsha was the first of the 2 daughters born to Carl and Verda Aiken Nystrom. Her dad taught auto mechanics at Sacramento City College, while her mom held down the home front. And being the baby of the household, she tended to push the limits until she got her own way. Sport, the collie, was her confidant when she was little, and the family would go for 2-week-long tent camping trips to Strawberry Lake. Marsha did well in school. She was especially drawn to the legal topics. She graduated with the Mighty Titans class of 1966 and went on to Sacramento City College, where she earned a 2-year legal secretary degree. In June of 1968, she got engaged to Tom. They would marry, but only be together for a year and a half because he turned out to be a drug addict. There was no way she was going down that road. So she made a phone call. Can I come home? She would be with her folks for 3 months before getting her own apartment, as she had landed a job with an attorney. She got her maiden name back, and through Tom's mom, landed a job in the California legislature, where she would continue for 9.5 years for Republican Assembly helping legislators. She'd spent another 9 years working for Assemblyman Bob Beverly. It was at the apartment house she was living at that Marsha first ran into salesman Bob Whiteside. She said it was hate at first sight. Sorry, Bob. And actually, she said it, because I was doing the interview, so I know what she... But that first impression managed to turn into love. They said their vows in a church service May 11th, 1974. Bought a brand new home in Davis and decked it out. In January of '78, Bob landed a long-time job with PIE Trucking. He was assigned to Concord the same year they were blessed with their first child, Jeff. Another transfer would occur in 1981, right before Stacy was born, this time here to Portland. When the kids were little, the family liked to do some tent camping, and even after Stacy and Bob divorced in '86, they continued to take Stacy, 5, and Jeff camping to outings like Detroit Lake and Cove Palisades. Marsha went back to work for an industrial leasing company, put in 8 or 9 years with them, becoming the office facilities manager. From there, she worked a little for an attorney before landing her job for the U.S. District Attorney's Office. She loved her first 5 years working in the criminal division because, as she said, you could easily identify the good guys from the bad guys. She enjoyed working for the U.S. attorneys in the federal courthouse, but then she shifted to Social Security. Oh my gosh. Can you say reams of paperwork? Away from the office, she enjoyed working in the yard and growing her roses. She also liked to sew, collect butterflies, unicorns, fabric, and lace, and had cats since she was little. Felina was with her for 20 years. I've never heard of a 20-year-old cat before. Then there was Snickers and Gizmo, and currently Pippin and Misty. On the canine side of the equation, after Sport, her childhood protector, she had Stanislaus, the St. Bernard, Peaches, the Irish Setter mix, and finally Cody, an American Eskimo. On TV, she was into Animal Planet and sci-fi, with Twilight Zone being her favorite forever. When it came to reading, she was a mysteries and romance novels girl. Marsha had smoked all of her life. A biopsy confirmed in January of last year that she had tongue cancer. She went on medical leave for 6 months before returning to work for a week in August. She remained just a week because a full lung scan indicated the cancer had spread. And in almost miraculous intervention, her Social Security disability started arriving, get ready for this, within a month. You gotta be kidding me. That's amazing. Stacy said that everyone from work has been simply awesome. So thank you. Marsha strongly believed in the Lord. She was baptized at the First Christian Memorial Church in Beaverton. She would tell you that she knew that God had saved her life on more than one occasion. When asked if she had any fears about dying, she'd reply, I did. I don't. I still do. By now, those fears have been erased. She has met her Savior face to face in a place where the roses are truly out of this world. And though her passing leaves a gap nobody else will be able to fill, her life and her love have left memories that nobody can steal. And at this time, I'd like to invite Stacy to, you're on, share a few thoughts. Get this a little closer for you there. How about that?
Lower, please.
You do whatever you want. No, we can't turn it off.
All right. Okay, so thank you, everyone, for coming. My mom and I talked about this day many, many times. Not morbidly so, but she was concerned about it. She had her hands in everything, trying to coordinate every detail that she could. We picked this place together, the urn, met Pastor Tom together, talked about the reception, but most importantly, we agreed that it should be a celebration. We knew everyone, particularly me, except for I'm actually okay at the moment, was going to be sad, and it'd be a sad day. But she was clear that the point of today would be to celebrate her. If not all of you knew her, at the very least, for a time or just a part of her. But regardless, you know she's a bright spirit, and we have a lot to celebrate. She's just one of those people. I have no doubts that she's here with us, not just to be with us, but wishing she could turn off the lights or move something to freak us out and then laugh afterwards. Something playful, shocking, and a little rebellious. That's my mom. If you know anything about me and my mom, you know that I'm the serious one and she's definitely the fun one. But still, we were pretty much attached at the hip for the better part of my growing up and as an adult. And as I've grown, I know as much as we are different, we are the same. We balance each other. Despite our differences and our history, over the years, she became one of my best friends. She was an integral part of my life. I hung out with my mom. Everything from getting dinner to traveling to getting our dog fix at our weekend visits to the Humane Society. Although she ragged on me for things that were not just like her, like doing something with my hair, which meant curling it, she permed my hair for the first time when I was 5. How I should wear more makeup, wanting me to show more of my figure or be more social. But beyond that, she knew and accepted me for who I was on a deeper level, especially as I grew into my own. Don't get me wrong, she always griped about something. One of the last conversations I had with her, she was telling me that I really do need to get the moles on my face removed. You would think that all this focus on the outside made her superficial, but that wasn't the case at all. It was her way of taking care of me. She had to focus on that kind of stuff for me because she knew I could care less. Although she did focus a lot of attention on matching every piece of fabric she wore and making sure her hair and makeup were done just right. That wasn't her whole in the least. Outside of being one of the most willful people I know, she was deep, spiritual, and extremely open. I think one of the coolest things I've realized throughout this journey is that I know my mom. I know her as a person, and she knows me. And I think that one of the most important things that my mom demonstrated for me was that she was human. She wasn't perfect, nor did she ever pretend to be, despite her perfectly styled hair and matched outfits. We had many honest conversations about her mistakes, her regrets, her successes, her wild times, her strengths and weaknesses, her highest highs and lowest lows. Because of our open relationship, I could talk to her about anything, and I mean anything, without judgment, expectations, or pressure to hide who I was or fear what she thought of me, even if we disagreed what that should be. I'm pretty sure some of my friends even took advantage of it. She taught me that being open and honest about who you are, good and bad, with yourself and others, is the true freedom that many people seek. For me, she was the manifestation of you do what you do based on what you know at the time, and you keep moving on and keep growing. In her prime, she was thoughtful beyond tradition, exposing us to people and experiences outside of our own circumstance, ensuring we truly understood that we are all human and no one is above anyone. In high school, she helped me solidify my faith in something beyond this world through my teenage woes, always asking me if I'd prayed, and reminded me of the quote she lived by: "The will of God will never take you where the grace of God cannot protect you." We had a crazy ride together, from the depths of wanting her replaced to the highs of being inseparable. Even in death. This road has proven to me that love and connection do live on, beyond what I ever thought possible. We always joked if there was a way, she definitely has the will. And she has proven that time and time again. From this point on, my hope is that her spirit is able to live through me to help me to not take any piece or moment of this life for granted, and always remember that while this life can be so serious, playtime is encouraged, and the promise that faith can get us through it all.
So do you write for a living or something? That was awesome. I listen to this a lot. Hey, Jeff, you get to try to follow that now. Okay.
That was beautiful. Thank you. Who was Marsha Whiteside? She was a daughter, a sister, an aunt, a wife, a friend, a colleague. She was many things to many people. For me, though, she has known me longer than anyone on this earth. She was my mother. Before I get into this, I believe in saying thank you when thank you is due. The question is, how do you do this in a eulogy without sounding like you're accepting an award? The answer is you can't. So I apologize if this sounds like a Grammy Award. One of my mother's greatest fears leading up to her passing is that her service would be met by an empty room. Clearly, this is not. I want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time to be here. She would be pleased to see all of you here for her, and our family is grateful for your efforts. There are many others who wanted to be here but could not. We appreciate the thoughts and memories they have offered us during this time. I also want to speak my appreciation for the team of doctors, nurses, and caregivers who helped my mom. They provided far more than we could have asked for, and we are eternally grateful for their service. I also would like to thank my sister Stacy, who stepped up tremendously to be my mom's primary caregiver. You are, in one word, amazing. I'd like to thank my Aunt Sherry and my dad for being there for us when it happened. Your display of love and compassion is appreciated more than words can express. All the others who have offered their sympathies, prayers, and help to our family, thank you from the bottom of my heart. My mom was a woman who could not be simply described. Her friends and the people who loved her come from all walks of life. Her life was full of beautiful oceanside moments, constant creative ventures, and a deep love for her family and friends. For good measure, there were a few jaunts down some of the darker paths of life, too. Even though she left us far too young, she led what could be described as a full life. When asked, "Do you believe you're going to heaven?" her response was, "Yes, but I think I'll have to make a few stops along the way." She was the kind of person who could mix and pour concrete and make a set of window curtains all in the same day. She could just as soon install a fountain in the backyard as she could create a piece of clothing from scratch. She could throw down a camping trip in the woods, relax on the beach, or prepare a picnic dinner from scratch on the back porch. She could wallpaper a room, stitch by hand, bake a cheesecake, or hang some perfectly level shelves. She could do thousands of remarkable things. She embodied the perfect mix of will, creativity, and utility. My mother had a sustained passion for life. Everything she did with a spirit, humor, and tenacity that few can muster. Even as she was dying, this was never lost. You see, when I received the call from my sister that she had been in a coma the entire morning, we truly thought it was her time to go. I immediately made the trek from Montana to Portland, hoping and praying she would hang on long enough for me to be there for her. I walked in the door shortly before 2 a.m. and said, "Hey, Mom, I'm here." I kid you not, at that moment, she woke straight up out of a coma and said, "Oh, Jeff's here. I've got to do things." She held on for 2 more weeks after that. And even on her deathbed, she wanted to go downtown, go for walks in the park, and get some shopping done. She stood on her own 2 feet until the day before she passed. That's my mom for you. Even dying couldn't break her spirit. On one hand, my mother feared her death. Don't we all? But on the other hand, she faced it with a bravery and a spirit that can only be admired. As I reflect back on this, I've realized that this is the bar she set for us in life. If my mother, with all her fears and anxieties, can look death in the face and not lose her courage, humor, or spirit, then there's nothing on this earth, no matter large or small, that can break us. She was always worried about us kids and how we would handle life without her here. But with life lessons like that, how can we fail? One of my favorite memories with my mother was back when we were young kids. She used to take us downtown here in Portland and look at the homeless. We'd drive around town and look at those who were much worse off than us. At the time, it seemed ridiculous, a bore. But nonetheless, it was the beginning of one of the most important lessons she taught me in life. She'd say, "See, things can get a lot worse." To this day, I occasionally think about these times and how fortunate we truly have been. It taught me one of the most valuable lessons of being human, but by the grace of God, there go I. From here, generosity and compassion were born, traits that my mother passed on to us. Her uncompromising honesty was a breath of fresh air in this less than honest world. She didn't hold back. I always knew when she was telling me something that it was true and real. My mom was not afraid to reveal herself to friends and family. She said what she meant, and she meant what she said. She was sensitive, but she'd call me on my issues if it came to that and it mattered. Her advice was always golden, and she would always put my best interests in the forefront. It's hard to lose an advocate like that. My mom loved her holidays. This was a woman who, when I was fully an adult, would come over to my house early Easter morning and set out an Easter egg hunt for me. Who does that for a grown adult? I loved it. She was a woman who started anticipating Christmas on December 26th. She would decorate her house for the Christmas season with phenomenal handcrafted winter displays, magnificent house lighting, and as a masterpiece, she would create a beautiful one-of-a-kind artisan Christmas tree. She loved to give presents with great big bows and other flair, making each and every gift seem like it was possibly the most important gift you have ever received. It was an amazing experience to be part of. We were fortunate to know that my mom's time would come when it did. Some say that this is a burden, but I say it's a blessing. It gave us the time to say what needed to be said, do what needed to be done, and even prepare for this moment. We're not always so fortunate, though. This is our reminder of what really matters in life, not our possessions or our status, but of our relationships. My mom instinctively knew this, and that's part of the reason why so many love her. She did well. I want to share one last thing. This experience is the hardest thing I have faced in life. I will miss my mom every day. That said, I truly thought when this happened that I would feel a void, a shearing of my heart from this loss. She meant so much to me. The truth is, though, I don't feel empty. I feel her in my heart just as if she was here today. It's almost as if she's able to cusp my heart in her hands and put me at ease. I heard it said, the people you love become like ghosts inside of you, and like this, you keep them alive. This is what actually happens, not in some theoretical spiritual sense, but in a very real, actual way. Even though she left this world, she has not left any of our hearts. My mom believed in angels. I do too now. Mom, I love you. I miss you. You were an amazing woman, and your loss cuts us deep. But I'll see you again soon, just hopefully not too soon.
Okay, that's 2 for 2. Okay, Bob.
Well, Marsha and I were married for 13 years, and I knew her for another 2 years before that, so I got to know a lot about her. And I learned some things that she might not openly disclose about herself. And knowing some of the fun facts that I'm going to talk about will help add to the understanding of what she was all about. And I want to talk about some of the things when she was younger and during the years we were together, so that it adds to how she was remembered. And the theme of what I want to talk about today are 5 things you might not know about Marsha. The first is she was afraid of heights. I didn't learn about that phobia until we were on our honeymoon. We were married in Sacramento and took a leisurely trip for a week down the California coast and ended up at the Disneyland Hotel towards the end of the week. And we were in the hotel lounge on the 11th floor of the hotel. It was a clear night. There was lots of lights. We had floor-to-ceiling windows to look out over Disneyland. It was a beautiful sight. And Marsha asked to change tables. She wanted to move away from the windows. And elevators. Elevators were okay, as long as they weren't on the outside of the building. She'd rather take the stairs. And the same for flights. You know, she ended up having to take medications to get on a flight because she was going to be in the airplane that long and that far off the ground for that long. The second thing that you probably didn't know about her is that she was an eternal optimist. After we'd been married 2 months, I was working down at the Stanislaus County Fair in Turlock, California, and she came down on the Greyhound bus from Sacramento for the weekend. And of course, you all know that she was a pet lover. But she checked out all the animals at the fair because it was in a rural county. But she zeroed in on the barnyard nursery. And she kept going back. and back. The dogs were represented by a St. Bernard litter, and it just happened that they were for sale. So she begged me to get one, and I threw out all my best arguments. We're over 100 miles from home. We've got a new house in Davis. It has no landscaping, no fences, no way to take care of a dog, and we already had a cat, Felina. And I traveled a lot. But the internal optimist side of her came out. She said, we'll make it work. So that's how we became the proud owners of a 6-week-old, 25-pound St. Bernard puppy that wasn't housebroken. We named a dog Stanislaus after the county where the fair was held. And like many of her optimistic plans, I realized that when she said, we'll make it work, that meant my role was to do the practical implementing of her ideas. The third thing you might know about her is that she had an extensive career in the California legislature. She started as a pool secretary, working for the Republican consultants. And the first member she worked for was Assemblyman Leo Ryan, who was new to the legislature and needed support help with people who understood the Capitol. And so he gave her an opportunity to work for him. And ultimately, he became a congressman. And it was a very sad day years later when the Sunday headlines announced that Assemblyman Ryan had been gunned down and murdered on the tarmac of the Jonestown massacres. Her California legislature career continued, and she was selected to work in another office, and that's when she started working for Assemblyman Bob Beverly from Manhattan Beach, California. She was his lead administrative assistant and coordinated all the administrative support for the assemblyman, his chief of staff, and interaction with the district office down in Southern California. When Assemblyman Beverly was elected to the state Senate, Marsha moved to the Senate office with her boss. Another interesting story about Marsha is that one day President Gerald Ford came to the Capitol. He was there to meet with Governor Jerry Brown and to address the joint session of the California legislature. So Marsha and her friends understood the plan, and they went down early to get a good viewing spot to get to see the president. And she knew President Ford would greet all the well-wishers when he arrived. So they noticed they got a place on the steps so they could see well what was going on. And all of a sudden, there was a commotion a few yards away from where they were, and there was a sizable crowd that came rushing towards them at a very fast pace. And all of her friends, she and her friends, were saying, wasn't that the president that just went by? And later she learned that Lynette Squeaky Frone had just pointed a gun at President Ford in an assassination attempt, and the crowd that she saw was about a dozen Secret Service agents rushing Ford and half carrying him into the Capitol building to a safe haven. Another fun story that I've always liked about her is that she parked across the street from the Capitol, just to the north, about a half a block from the east entrance to the Capitol building. And one night she walked out and noticed that Governor Jerry Brown was walking next to her. And of course, she was always able to communicate with people at a lot of different levels and from varied backgrounds. And so the governor asked her where she was going, and she said she was going to get her car. And the governor asked her, well, why don't you park in the free parking lot that the state provides? And she said, well, we often, those of us that work in the legislature often leave late at night, and it's dark, and it's a three-block walk through the Capitol Park to get down to the free lot, and there's lots of trees and bushes for people to hide behind, and the undesirables hang out in the park. And she said lots of women consider that long walk to be unsafe. And the next day, Governor Brown surprised everybody by issuing an executive order that the sergeant at arms at the state capitol would provide escorts after hours for the members of the legislature who had to walk to their cars through the park during the dark. The next thing I bet you didn't know about Marsha is that her favorite band was Creedence Clearwater Revival. And her favorite song was Proud Mary. So when we'd go to dinner dances, she'd always have me go up to the band and ask and request Proud Mary. And if not Proud Mary, then There's a Bad Moon Rising, Born on the Bayou, or Lodi. I mean, whatever they could play was fine. And she didn't just dance to Creedence Clearwater Revival songs. When she would dance, she would sing along with the lyrics. So when you hear Creedence Clearwater Revival songs in the future, think about Marsha rocking and bopping out and enjoying herself, singing along with the song and with the bands that was her favorite. And the last thing I wanted to point out that you may not know is that she was a member of an organization called Beta Sigma Phi. And that's a that's a non-academic sorority for women who share social, cultural, and educational values. And she was active in fundraising, volunteered for their service projects, and served in various elected positions. She joined that sorority in Sacramento and then transferred to the chapters in Davis, down at Concord Walnut Creek, and then to 2 chapters in the Beaverton area. And as she followed me around in my career, she was able to move from chapter to chapter and instantly have a group of friends that were like-minded women. Her proudest moment was being awarded the Order of the Rose, which was an honor for women who gave generously to the organization and recognized them as devoted members whose thought, conduct, and purpose reflected the highest ideals in beauty, love, and truth. That pretty much sums up Marsha, except for the fact she gave birth to our 2 wonderful children, Jeff and Stacy. And through those children, she and I are linked forever. Her legacy is as much what she left behind as it is who she was and what she did during her lifetime. May she rest peacefully into eternity.
Are we impressed? That's 3 for 3. Now, the cleanup batter, Adrian. Where are you, Adrian? I believe this is a boss from work, so I think she can hit a home run. Come on, Adrian.
Good afternoon, everyone. Stacy and Jeff, thank you so much for having me, letting me share what I knew about Marsha, what our office knew about Marsha. So I knew about Marsha long before I actually had met her because my husband worked in the office, in the U.S. Attorney's office. For those of you who don't know, I am now an assistant U.S. attorney in the office, but when I got to know Marsha, she was a legal assistant who worked across the hall from my husband. And I lived in Alaska. And every once in a while, I would get these calls from my husband about how he felt like he needed to lose weight. And I would be like, well, that's not hard, you just got to cut out the snacking, And he would say, well, there's this assistant across the hall, and she has this, jar of M&Ms, and every time I go past, I have to grab a handful of M&Ms. I'm like, what do you mean you have to grab a handful of M&Ms? And he's like, well, they're there, and, she's always friendly, and I stop and chat with her, and I learned that this was Marsha. Well, later, when I started working in the office, and I actually got to work directly with Marsha, she reported to me as her as her attorney supervisor. And I learned that indeed you can't just walk past that jar of M&Ms. You have to stop and grab a handful. And so now I know what my husband was going through as he worked in that office in trying to keep your weight down. So Marsha and Stacy were invited to our wedding when Michael and I got married, and I have some feeling that it was this indebtedness that Michael felt like he owed Marsha for all the M&Ms that he had eaten. And she came, and she added a nice flair to the wedding. As you know, Marsha was all about flair. I noticed that when I started working for her, Monday through Thursday, I typically wear a pretty boring suit, look like any other government attorney. But on Fridays, when I can actually wear some flair, I would get compliments from her. Those would be the only days I would get compliments from her. So yes, Marsha, I wore my flair today for you. So I got the privilege of working directly with Marsha. As you know, as you heard when she was introduced, that she worked with the Social Security docket. And what she did in that job when I was supervising her, I think says a lot about her character and a lot about who she was as a person at the core. And I wanted to get to know her a little bit better about what she did. This was a whole foreign, I didn't even know this docket existed before I came working for her. And lo and behold, it is the busiest docket that we have. There are over 500 cases filed on any given year. I think last year it actually went down to 425. And Marsha was responsible for filing each and every administrative record of those cases that was filed. So it was reams of paper, definitely. But it also took a lot of dedication to just stick with it, right? I mean, day in and day out, this is what you're doing. But I didn't really know much about the docket. I had come from doing criminal practice, and so I was wanting to schedule a time that I could sit down and meet with her and talk to her about it and learn about what she's doing. And so, but I just asked if I could, have coffee with her sometime. I didn't mention that I was, I just wanted to sit down and learn. I just said, hey, let's schedule coffee sometime. This was, early on. She didn't know me that well. I knew she had come from a couple of other attorneys that she had worked for that she didn't have necessarily great relationships with. So I wanted to start right from the beginning. So I said, let's schedule coffee. And it wasn't the kind of thing that I could just go and grab her for coffee, because I also had 4 other legal assistants that were coming to me on various other dockets, and so I actually had to schedule this, right? So she's like, okay. She was like, really concerned about this, but she was okay. We can do that, and she's like, well, how about Tuesday? Monday. I got a lot of stuff to do. So I was like, I'm just wanting to have coffee with her. Like, what's the problem? Why is this so upsetting? And so we go and we go to City Coffee, which is a little coffee shop across the street, and we sit down and I said, Marsha, I just want to, get to know what you do. I want to understand what you do. I want you to help me help you. And there was this sigh of relief. Like, she just thought it was going to be bad news. Like, why else would an attorney want to sit down and have coffee with you? I mean, this tells you, the relationships that she had before. And after that, we had the best communication that I've had with any legal assistant. She knew that she could just come and talk to me. And that made a world of a difference. And so she taught me a lot about working with support staff, how to communicate with them, how to help them, and how to have them help you. And she taught me the compassion that you can have in a job, even when you're working with people who are your opponents. We have a representative here from the plaintiff's attorneys who she worked with, Linda Ziskin, and it was really wonderful for me, not just because I was so busy with all these dockets, but also because I could see that she really cared about making sure that people got what they needed. And whether that was attorneys or pro se plaintiffs who would call, she took care of those people, and I didn't have to. And I could have faith that she would get it done. And if there was an issue, she would bring it to me. And for me, as an attorney and someone who was relatively new to the office, that meant the world to me. And I know that she did that because of all these things that Stacy and Jeff and Bob talked about, just the core of who she was, just a good person. So part of that, core sort of values that she had also stem through our office as well. I believe that we had such an outpouring of support for her when she first got sick because of the type of people that the U.S. Attorney's Office draws. The support that this office showed was just incredible to me when she first got sick. Up here, one of the things that's up here is the seal, and you'll see all the signatures of the people from the office who signed it. That's a tradition that we have to provide a seal to people who have retired. Well, in Marsha's case, she was retiring but also dying. And this office came together and donated over 1,000 hours of leave for her so she could be able to continue to get paid while she was going through the process of her hospice treatment, while she was going through the process of trying to get her retirement in order. And that also went through the Social Security Regional Counsel's office. They donated hours. People from other districts donated hours. It was just this power of the compassion of the human spirit that was, overwhelming to me, and I know to Marsha, indeed. As you can tell, she did have some fears and phobias, fearing that no one would show up today, fearing that I was going to tell her something bad because I wanted to have coffee with her. So I know that she was blown away by the outpouring of support that the office, the Department of Justice, and the Regional Counsel's office gave to her. And for people who couldn't give leave, because there were people who came to me, people who had also been sick in the past, and said, I just don't have leave, I don't have any leave, but I want to do something. And those people brought meals. They also donated money for house cleaning to keep her house tidy as she was going through hospice treatment. And people just found a way, and we actually received over $1,000 in donations to keep her house clean while she was going through hospice treatment. The following aspect of the outpouring of support, I think, would mean the most to her today, however, and that is the donations to the Humane Society. As you can see, there are no flowers here today, and that's exactly how she wanted it. She was such an animal lover. In fact, so much so that Stanislaus apparently donated money. He came back from the dead and donated money. And I set a goal when I set up this tribute page of $1,000. That seemed to be the 1,000 seemed to be the figure with over 1,000 hours of leave, over $1,000 to house cleaning services, and I really was not expecting more than maybe a couple $100. I mean, she's gone and she's not in the office anymore, and why would people continue? I mean, they've already given so much. But again, the spirit and the power of compassion was overwhelming to me when just this morning I checked, and in fact, $1,215 has been donated to the Humane Society in Marsha's honor. Thank you. And the last thing I want to share with her, the compassion of this office and the compassion of those who love her, is how much she loved her kids. She was always so thoughtful about who she was going to spend time with on what holiday. This really would worry her. With Jeff being in Montana and Stacy being here, she really struggled, and I talked to her about this, about what she would do for the holidays, and she would just worry about who she would spend time with. How would the other child feel if I was spending time with this child? And why can't we just all get together? And I know it meant the world. The silver lining in this is how much you guys have come together in the process of caring for her, because she loved you. It was so clear to me, day in and day out, how much she talked about you and how much she worried about you and how much she wanted the best for you. And I know that her spirit and everything that she has taught you is going to continue to live on, and she will forever be present in your lives. But because of that, because of her love of you, I wanted to also have the office show one last pouring of support and cards to you, Stacy and Jeff, from the office. And the cards initially were blank inside, but they're completely filled now with little notes from the office. And I've read each and every one of them, and they are very, very powerful. They talk about everything you've heard today, her humor, her laughter, her spirit, and this connection of hers with butterflies does not go unnoticed as well. And I would just like to close with words from my favorite artist, Dave Matthews, has a song called Butterfly, and the first line goes, "You are my butterfly." And Marsha, you are definitely my butterfly. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, at this time, now just I'm going to mention kind of ahead of time, following our service, the reception is prepared for everyone upstairs, which is, I think, an excellent time to share more and more stories. But I'd love to see these pictures. So at this time, we're going to have this magic screen come down, and we're going to have some more memories stirred up with some more lovely pictures. Well, you'll understand just in a moment. This is a sing-along song. Figured it out yet? I left a good job in the city, working for the man every night and day, and I never lost 1 minute of sleeping, worrying about the way things might have been. Big wheel keep on turning, proud Mary keep on burning, rolling, rolling, rolling on a river. Somebody was doing it. I cleaned a lot of plates in Memphis, pumped a lot of pain down in New Orleans, but I never saw the good side of the city till I hitched a ride on a riverboat queen. Big wheel keep on turning, proud Mary keep on burning. Next chance rolling, rolling, rolling on a river. Better. If you come down to the river, bet you're gonna find some people who live. You don't have to worry, 'cause you have no money. People on the river are happy to give. Big wheel keep on turning, proud Mary keep on burning, rolling, rolling. Oh, that is pathetic. Okay, this is your last try. I know, we're celebrating, right? What would you, okay, what would Marsha do? Huh? All right. Okay, I said that was your last chance. I'll give you one more chance. Big wheel keep on turning, proud Mary keep on, last chance, rolling, yeah, rolling, rolling on a river again. Oh, rolling, rolling, rolling on a river, that's better. Thank you. Well, this was pretty fascinating to me, and that is when I went over to the house to hang out with Marsha and Stacy to get a little information to help prepare for the service. I showed up, and we had a good talk and spent a lot of time together, and I don't know, it was at least an hour, you know, maybe. Okay, fine. Like I said, at least an hour. And towards the end, you know, Marsha was getting a little tired, and so I said, okay, we can talk over the phone later. Well, here's the rest of the story. So when I showed up that day, we were meeting, and my phone started buzzing, and so I thought, oh, well, It's not my wife, I'm all right. And so got done with the meeting, and I got out to my car to see what the call had been. And this voice said, Tom, I thought you were going to come over to the house today and talk with us. I went, ah! So I checked my calendar. I was at the wrong house. I had got there a day early. And in their graciousness, I don't even know if you knew I was a day early, but she did. You're very nice. And so we had a nice thing, and this other family was gracious, and I went to Vancouver. Guess what? That was the last day that Marsha was able to verbally speak. And the next day, if I would have come when planned, she wouldn't have been able to say anything to me. So what do you think? I don't know how to explain that. Of course, my wife would know how to explain it. I'm a moron half the time, but it's like, that's one time that sure worked out for the good. Anyway, I just had to tell you that. Anyway, one of the things I ran past them was a little analogy that I offered to share today. And with their blessing, I'm going to pass it on to you at this time. It's a real simple analogy that addresses a very profound question. The question is, so what is it actually like to die? Yeah, it's a simple question, isn't it? I think most of us understand that death is part of life, or at least I think we used to understand that. I'm honestly beginning to wonder in our culture if we understand that anymore. When most of us used to live on the farm, right, in America, you had to deal with death because death is part of life. We've moved off the farms, most of us, into the cities and the suburbs, and I'm of the opinion that as a culture of late, we're just a lot more isolated from dealing with the event of death than we used to be. I mean, can you remember when it used to be almost every other day you'd see a funeral procession driving through town going to the cemetery? How often do you see that anymore? Almost never. I actually know people that are hoping that one of these years will finally cure every disease and even learn how to isolate that gene that makes us grow old in the first place. Do a little gene therapy, slow down the aging process, or maybe turn that little sucker off altogether so we never have to die. Right? People are having their bodies frozen at the moment of death, hoping, what? That one day they'll be reanimated. Okay, so I kind of think we're almost trying to hide death. I almost get that feeling sometimes, that death is almost a politically incorrect topic. Here's the analogy. Dying is actually like moving out of a house. Only when it's my turn to die, the house that I'm going to move out of is this body that I currently live in. That's the analogy. Now, though I personally can't relate to dying yet, can anybody here relate to moving out of a house? See, I've got that one down more times than I care to remember. Now, if I think of dying like that, here's just a few thoughts that seem to make sense to me. If I think of this body as my house that I live in, then everywhere I go, I notice people's houses. I think we all do. I notice that we come in different sizes and shapes and colors and models. And I guess I'd say some of my friends must be studio apartment model because they're kind of short. Others of my friends are like two-story townhouse model, really tall. I've been noticing lately, a lot of my friends my age, we all seem to be adding a spare room to our house. And I've also noticed some back porches enlarging, but and like a house, if something does go haywire inside of me, I can call a repairman to do work on my house. Only we call them doctors. I can replace parts sometime if they go haywire. Maybe somebody here today has got a new heart valve or a hip replacement or a knee joint. And honestly, I think it's getting kind of astounding, all the things we can do to these houses. I think it might even, no, it wasn't here, but I was telling this little story about a month or so ago. And a lady in attendance kind of waved her hand as I'm telling this story, and she points to her eyes. I said, oh, did you get some new glass panes for your windows there? And she goes, no, I got new corneas. Right? I mean, it's awesome. I mean, I think it really is amazing, all we can do. But obviously, we can't fix everything. I know that when my dad died, our youngest son, Caleb, was about 8 years old at the time. And our family tradition was the night before the ceremony, the service, there'd be a viewing of the body at the funeral home for family or friends that wished to pay their final respects. So Caleb heard about that, and he said, well, Dad, I want to go see Grandpa. I said, son, I'm not so sure you want to do that. He said, well, I do. I said, okay. So the night before the service, the two of us went to the funeral chapel, happened to be in Newport, Oregon, and we walked in, and Caleb saw Grandpa lying in front up there in his casket. Well, Caleb wasn't freaked out. Dad really looked pretty good. Morticians really are good at what they do, and with the makeup and the lights, it kind of looked like Dad was just sleeping up there. So Caleb wasn't freaked out, but he also wasn't satisfied. And he said, Dad, would it be okay if I went and touched Grandpa's hand? I said, well, it's okay if you want to, son. So I walked up with him because I knew he was in for a bit of a surprise, and he waltzed right up there and touched his grandpa's hand. And when he did, those blue eyes of his went boing, and he said, Dad. I said, what? Looked up at me and scrunched his eyebrows down. He said, that's not Grandpa. I said, Caleb, you are absolutely right. That's not Grandpa. That's the house that Grandpa used to live in. And the reason his hand feels so different tonight, son, is Grandpa's not home. Grandpa's moved out of that house. And that little guy looked up at me and he said, okay. I'm not kidding. You know, he was fine. I'm not saying every kid would be like that, but that was Caleb. You know, I've been a pastor most of my life, and I've had parents say to me, you know, Pastor, we don't think kids should come anywhere close to death. It's too scary for them. I've kind of found the opposite of that to be true. As a matter of fact, at this stage in my life, I've come to believe that kids tend to get this quicker than adults do. I kind of think as we grow older, our tendency is we start complicating just about everything we get our hands on, whereas kids tend to keep things simple. And the last thought I want to offer you is taken from the 23rd Psalm, which a lot of you have known since you were kids. It starts with the phrase, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. The middle verse in that short little psalm, David penned these words, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me, thy rod and staff comfort me. Now, in this case, David doesn't compare death to moving out of a house, which is not my bright idea. I read that in the Bible, too. David said, dying is like having to walk through a valley that's in shadow. Well, having lived in Western Oregon all my life, I can see that picture, right? We got valleys. We got shadows. And I suppose when I do get my eviction notice and I have to move out of this house, and I really have no clue when that's going to be, and as much driving as I do in the metro area every day, could be today. But when my time comes and I do step outside of this house and the first thing I see is this valley I need to walk through that I've never seen before, that's in shadow. That could be a little challenging. Except having lived here, I know this and you do too. You can't have a shadow in the valley if you don't have a light source someplace else. You can't do shadows without light. Personally, I don't think that valley we're destined to walk through is a great big valley like the Willamette Valley. I don't think it takes long to get through it myself. I am convinced at the end of the walk, we're going to personally meet the light that caused there to be a shadow in the first place. And I'm convinced with all my heart that Marsha has finished that walk. And the final verse of the 23rd Psalm begins with these words. Well, the final words say, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So if death is like moving out of a house, when I read that, it gives me hope that there's a house waiting for me to move into. That's it. I mean, it's a simple little thought, and death's a great big deal, but when I think of it that way, it helps me to think of it, and I thank you for your very kind attention. Well, we have one final song we're going to have together, and I think, if I'm correct, there's a wonderful gentleman named Fred that's going to come and lead us a cappella. Thank you, Fred. It's Ron.
Otherwise known as your backup for rolling.
Well, the reason we have Ron coming is because we need a spiritual song now, so I'll get out of the way.
Thank you, Pastor. And thank you. The family asked if I would sing Amazing Grace. My guess is many of you know this song, and so please sing with me. And I am a tenor, so I may not pick a good key for you. But if you can get anywhere near close, please sing with me. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear when first I did believe. The Lord has promised good to me. His word my hope secures. He will my shield and portion be, as long as life endures. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see.
That whistling is worth the price of admission. Thank you. It's hard to do when you're standing in front of everybody. I know, I've tried it before. Well, folks, this has been awesome. It's a great celebration. Thank you all. I'd like to offer a prayer, and then you'll be dismissed, and the reception is repaired? I don't know that it was damaged. Prepared for you upstairs. So let's pray. Heavenly Father, as we gather here today, as it were, at the very edge of the valley of the shadow of death, Lord, you know we don't like having to be here today in spite of it all. We really wish we never had to do this. It still stirs up questions, Lord, that we don't have answers for. It releases emotions at times impossible to control. But Lord, thank you that you speak of life after this life. You even speak of a place prepared and waiting for us. And Lord Jesus, how we thank you again today that by coming back out of your grave and ascending up to heaven, you've left us with this hope of eternal life. Now, Lord, once again, thank you for Marsha's life. Lord, it seems to us it was way too short. But Lord, thank you for the years she was here. Lord, thank you for the truth of the matter that her life will continue to impact our world for a very long time to come. Father, I pray for everyone here today that loves her, and for those who weren't able to join with us today as well. I ask, Lord, that in the hours, days, weeks, months, perhaps years that lie ahead of some of us on our journey, in those times, Lord, when our own emotions of grief might surprise us, kind of like one of those sneaker waves down at the beach we don't see coming that can knock us flat in our face. Lord, in those times we don't know which way is up or where to turn, would you please help us draw just one more breath and manage one more step? Father, above all, I pray, would you help each of us here today cherish every single moment we have with those we love. For truly, Lord, you're the only one who knows who the next one of us here is that'll be moving out of these houses we currently live in. Now, Lord, I pray for your touch of healing, comfort, and hope to rest upon each one here in Christ's name. Amen. This time I invite Keith to come, our funeral director, and he will give us our dismissal and instructions for the next phase. Keith?